May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. Forgive us that often we forgive ourselves so easily and others so hardly. Forgive us that we expect perfection from those to whom we show none. Forgive us for repelling people by the way we set a good example. Forgive us the folly of trying to improve a friend. Forbid that we should use our little idea of goodness as a spear to wound those who are different. Forbid that we should feel superior to others when we are only more shielded, and may we encourage the secret struggle of every person. Vivian Pomeroy. By now, you've heard what happened to me in January. Black ice on a tilting sidewalk on my way to catch the green line at the Woodland Station, a slip, spinning because of the angle and weighed down by a backpack, and life changed in an instant. Ruptured quadriceps tendon is not a common injury, but I'm grateful the orthopedic specialist knew exactly what to do about it. Once I had the surgery to repair that tendon, my knee had to be immobilized for several weeks. I was forbidden from driving or traveling for a month or so and told my recovery would last at least 4 to 6 months, which is pretty much on schedule. That all sounds like a major limit on life, a serious kink in the plans, and of course it is. But the lessons it offered appeared almost as soon as the slip happened. Various people jumped to my aid that day. Good Samaritans I had never met and will likely never meet again. In general, people were concerned and helpful, our first principle at work. Once I was thrust into an awkward situation, it was up to me to figure out how to make the day work. Setting up the Uber app and ordering a car, calling the conference organizer to ask his help, deciding to stay in Boston for 3 days of the conference. No way was I going to cancel out on that. I had a couple of talks that I had scheduled to give. Being ready to ask for and accept help is another key lesson. Believe it or not, my strongest sensation of all this unfolded, was an unprecedented sense of gratitude. Over and over, folks helped me when I was obviously in pain and provided me extras I clearly needed, like a colleague who loaned me his umbrella to serve as a cane, or the bellhop who located a wheelchair for me. As well, when I sought out medical care, I was lucky enough to be treated immediately at the best orthopedic facility in the Northeast and received an excellent care during my stay. And my sweet wife was extra helpful as I began that long road to recuperation at home. Being suddenly limited gives a whole new insight into what some people live with their entire lives. Navigating in a wheelchair, lack of a limb, inability to see or hear, or some other physical restriction. Heading to my meeting in the wheelchair that Tuesday morning, I had the experience that wheelchair-bound folks encounter almost every day. The elevator opened and was so full of people that it was obvious I was never going to fit in. Politely, I said, I'll catch the next one, and as luck would have it, the next one had enough space for me to roll in. Others are not so lucky and sometimes have to wait an hour or more before getting simple transport between floors. But enough about me and my knee repair. A much deeper and larger issue arises from this experience. We're in a time of unparalleled bigotry. White versus black, white versus Hispanic, able versus limited, rich versus poor, and the list goes on. Consider language. Only a few days ago, a number of news sources reported how a lawyer having lunch at a New York City fast casual restaurant raged loudly at the manager, "Your staff is speaking Spanish to customers when they should be speaking English." Every person I listened to, he spoke it, she's speaking it. It's America. The speaker then added, "I will be following up, and my guess is they're not documented. So my next call is to ICE to have each one of them kicked out of the country." Mind you, the incident was caught on video and widely viewed on YouTube. And according to Time.com, I quote here, the company that runs the building he uses as his law firm's address said that his agreement with it had been terminated because his actions were contrary to its rules and regulations, end quote. In addition, he has had a complaint filed against him with a disciplinary committee that oversees lawyers in the state. Nonetheless, how do we come to the point where some individuals consider it offensive and intolerable simply to hear another language spoken? My own experience has been completely the opposite. I've spent time in Germany and Switzerland and have made a point of listening carefully to others speaking to me in German and attempting to express myself in their language. This experience goes well beyond what words will translate what I would say in English. Now, people are frequently surprised and pleased to hear me, an American, making an attempt to communicate in their language. But the benefit for me is even greater. Understanding how people express certain ideas opens a huge window into how they think, feel, and view the world. In light of that experience, I now way prefer to know at least some of the local language whenever I travel outside the U.S. Even when I don't understand the language being spoken, it's just fun to bask in the richness of this diversity of language. There's the view of immigrants, whether Mexican or Muslim or African, and the list goes on. African countries were castigated with profanity in a White House meeting not long ago. I'm sure you remember that comment. Mexican immigrants were characterized as murderers and rapists during the 2016 election. A September 2016 report by the Pew Charitable Trust noted that state governors across the country raised protests about resettlement of Syrian refugees in their states, no doubt fueled in part by widespread perception that Syrian refugees include terrorists. I have to laugh. While searching for an image to put on today's order of service, I came across a poster with the words, "You say a bunch of immigrants are refusing to assimilate to your culture and are threatening your way of life? Man, that sucks." The speaker is Native American Chief Sitting Bull, and he should know. Another concern is the able versus physically challenged. In the February 4th Ideas section of the Boston Globe, Pasquale Toscano wrote, and I quote here, "I was born with a hearing loss. I've struggled with mental illness my entire life. And since a spinal cord injury 4 years ago, I've walked with a cane and brace. I'm proud to identify as disabled. That's why I'm concerned by how references to disability are increasingly being deployed as a political tactic. Regardless of the source, ableist rhetoric that conflates disability with an inability to contribute meaningfully to society is toxic. In fact, there is a long narrative of able-bodied individuals refusing to believe that those who think or act or hear or see or walk differently can possibly be effective in a given capacity. In a similar vein, memoirists such as Stephen Coesisto and Christina Crosby have explored the epistemological advantages that disability can confer. The author writes, "After my spinal cord injury, I too learned from my physical metamorphosis. Disability instilled lessons about the fragility of the human condition, the importance of asking for and accepting help from people in your life, and the realization that we're all needy in some way. Disability enables me, as it has done for many others, to see the world from a different angle." The author advocated focusing our discussion not on deriding the other party whom we see as crazy, but on the clearly negative consequences of the current public discourse, and went on, "This realignment in thinking is essential. Resorting to the terminology of physical or mental difference allows divisive leaders to dominate the discussion because they're willing to go the farthest to insult or debase their opponents. There will always be reasons, some shiny with a veneer of legitimacy, to discriminate against disabled individuals. We must be especially vigilant in challenging this tendency so disabled people can engage in society as fully as everyone else." End quote. Those reasons, shiny with the veneer of legitimacy, appear in plenty of other areas. Some of this distrustful view of anyone seen as other, language, culture, religion, sexual orientation, place of origin, whatever, arises from fear. Possibly understandable fear, at least until we know the facts. Some worry about low-cost immigrant labor taking away jobs, though the fact is that virtually everyone demands cheapest prices for produce, clothing, and everything else. Many are concerned about danger from terrorist attacks. Never mind the point that many times more people are killed by homegrown criminals than by terrorists from abroad. Just consider the recent rash of school shootings. Fear is only one element, though. We appear to have become a society largely uninterested in civilized discourse, more concerned with flaming on and finding scapegoats than with understanding other people's views. Much of what I'm saying sounds like an exhortation for tolerance, but tolerance is only part of the issue. Appreciation goes much farther than live and let live. This country once prided itself on being the so-called melting pot, where each new ethnic group added something to the overall mixture. Learning to appreciate is in part recognizing the value that differences bring to society. When we discuss the design of medical device and consider possible safety issues in that design, we need diverse viewpoints around that table. Nurses will see certain elements. Technicians will see others. Different physician specialists will recognize some aspects. Engineers will know the impacts of many design suggestions. Regulatory specialists will offer comparison with similar devices. And patients will weigh in with other thoughts and experiences. All of these things make for a better and safer design. In the same way, different ethnic and cultural viewpoints in our society serve to make the whole that much richer. Just consider the variety of cuisine we find in all the ethnic restaurants today. When Chris was growing up, going out to an Italian restaurant was a serious case of the foreign and unfamiliar to her family. Much of the same has occurred with literature and, of course, with music. We don't just have sea shanties and English ballads, but jazz, soul, salsa, and a lot of other styles we can listen to. Our language itself has grown richer from the diverse influences. Years ago, we used to use the term tidal wave to describe the type of event which leveled Banda Aceh in Indonesia in 2004. But now we've assimilated the more accurate term tsunami from the Japanese language. We shouldn't forget the benefit that immigrants have brought to science and technology. Take the example of Wernher von Braun, who came to the U.S. after World War II and played a key role in building NASA's space program. Shortly after my accident and before seeing my doctor, I texted an old friend who has dealt with a bad knee since we were in college together that the event gives me new appreciation for what some people have to deal with all their lives. She responded, "What is that saying, walk in another man's shoes?" Is that truly what we need? Does each of us have to spend a day or a week wheelchair-bound or with his or her eyes covered? A colleague at our conference in January described a diversity training at his company where they were required to do exactly that. Choose one of those options, spend a day in a wheelchair, spend a day with a blindfold on, or some other kind of a disability. Do we need to learn another language and live in that culture to appreciate that others see the world in a different way? Do we need to work menial jobs and live in a rundown apartment to know what it is to be poor? Do we always need literally to step into someone else's world, a different race, a different culture, a different physical capabilities, not just to tolerate the other, but truly to appreciate what the person deals with and can contribute? What if we cultivate the capacity to listen, to step mentally out of our own sphere of existence? What if we learn, as Reverend Rogers suggested at our 300th anniversary, not just to walk together, but to walk toward one another? If it is language that makes us human, one half of language is to listen. Silence can exist without speech, but speech cannot live without silence. Listen to the speech of others. Listen even more to their silence. To pray is to listen to the revelations of nature, to the meaning of events. To listen to music is to listen also to silence, and to find the stillness deepened and enriched.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, building bridges between our divisions, with all of our voices and all of our visions, with all of our voices and all of our visions, with all of our voices and all of our visions, with all of our voices between our divisions, with all of our voices and all of our visions, with all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony.